What is up, guys? It is Jake from QuadHunting, and audio might sound weird, video might look weird because I'm not in my usual spot. I'm actually in a hotel room for work. I'm on a business trip, so still wanted to get this video out. So I'm doing it off my old laptop, my old webcam, and yeah, so it's still happening. So we're gonna get into it. This is the week 5 Q&A that we have got, and then I'm going to fill in some blanks after that in the preview for the Lions versus Panthers. So let's get into it. The first question I got, and I got two questions from the it's called Cat Scratch Reader. It's the Panthers SB Nation site. And I also got a question from Pro Sports. So 3 questions this week, but they were all pretty well. 3 people that asked questions, but they all asked multiple questions. So we actually have a decent amount of questions. But anyways, so the question comes from PC Road Rage, and it is, he says, thanks for stopping by. I have a few. How is Detroit's wide receiver depth? Tate is the only one I'm familiar with. Should we worry about the others? Tate is, of course, the bigger name in our. Tate is the bigger name, of course, in our receiving core. But I think our depth is pretty average. I don't think it's amazing, and I don't think it's definitely one of the worst. I think it sits kind of in the middle. And Stafford's ability makes those receivers better than they probably have any right to be. Marvin Jones is our speedster. He's the guy that's going to run a lot of streaks and those routes like that where you can utilize his break-end speed. And then you have Tate, who uses more of he goes on more of the underneath short routes, the ones that get the rack yards, the receiving yards after catch. And then you got Galladay, who had the great first game against the Cardinals, but since then has been really quiet. I think teams started to focus in more on him. And he's a rookie. I didn't expect him to blow up the season to begin with. TJ Jones comes in as the number 4 receiver, and I think he kind of fits that role okay. He's had some moments where he's had some big catches to keep the Lions in the game. But other than that, as the receiver depth goes, that is the receiver depth. I think Jared Everday still is on the team. Pretty confident he is. I'm not 100% sure. So thanks for the question. He also asks, how is Ebron coming along? He's a UNC guy, so many of us are familiar with him. I personally thought he was overrated when drafted, and he definitely started out slow. Has he gotten it together? No. And if you go through some of my older videos, I'm an Ebron fan. I like Ebron. I think he could definitely be a big piece in this offense. I'm starting to kind of get churned off to him. If you go read my article on WordPress, I'll leave a link down below on that. I also answer these in written form just in case I can't get a video out. That way there is still an answer form for you guys. But his play so far this season has been shoddy at best. Last week he started losing snaps to Darren Fells. Darren Fells actually led the tight ends in snaps, and Fells played great with them. Made 4 big catches for, I think it was only like 40 yards, but still every catch he made was an impact play that moved the chains or got us closer to being like a 3rd and 2 or something like that. It wasn't a 3rd and 10. He made some big plays, and he was signed to be a blocking tight end, and he's ending up getting these catches now, and he's looking good in his playing time. So I think Darren Fells is going to you're going to see a little more of that Darren Fells eating up some of Ebron snaps, and we even saw Michael Roberts make a couple catches last week and start eating the rest of those snaps of Ebron. I think this could possibly be Ebron's last year unless he picks it up. I mean, we have faced good defenses throughout the beginning of this part of the season. All 4 of the defenses we faced coming into the season were rated out to be one of the better defenses. So maybe that has something to do with it. They'll just feast hopefully on some of these weaker defenses, but we need Ebron to step up. So, but no, long story short, he has not gotten it all together, I don't think. Yeah, sadly, I wish he could. Our O-line is dreadfully inconsistent. How is their matchup this week? Specifically speaking, speaking generally, we are strong inside and a little weak on the ends. So that is where you do not want to be weak with the Lions. Now, Ansa's been kind of slow this season. He had a great game against Eric Flowers and the Giants. Ansa, I'm starting to think, is the guy that'll beat up on weaker ends who don't get any help. But if they start to get help, you can neutralize him on the field. You look throughout the rest of the season, he hasn't gotten any sacks in the other 3 games. 1 game, 3 sacks. I mean, that's where his 3 sacks comes from. So his stats look good to begin with, but he hasn't really been the pass rusher that we've known from the couple seasons ago. So I don't know if it's still nagging, that injury nagging him, or what it is, but he can beat up less than average tackles, and if he doesn't have that tackle doesn't get help blocking, then he's going to beat him up. And then Anthony Zettel has been probably the biggest surprise of the whole season. When Kerry Hyder got hurt, going into the preseason, a lot of Lions fans, our depth on the D line was awful, D ends especially. And then when you got Kerry Hyder, who led the Lions in sacks, go down in the first preseason game for the whole season, it was really worrisome. But then Anthony Zettel has stepped up and has become a monster. I think it's 4 sacks in the season. Don't quote me on that 100%. I don't have the stats in front of me, but he is leading the Lions in sacks, and he's the second highest rated edge rusher on Pro Football Focus, PFF. I think that's the one. Yeah, he's the second highest rated edge rusher. So he's getting the pass pressure. He's getting what he needs to do, and he's doing it well. It's not what I thought. I didn't see him, thinking that that's what it was going to do. I said he's been a big surprise since last year. He was a late pick in the draft. And I said the ends will feast if they don't have any help blocking them. And then I said Nagata, Ashawn Robinson, Akeem Spence, those guys rotate in the middle, and Jeremiah Ledbetter. They've all been kind of rotated in heavily, and Nagata's shown in the first couple games of the season he can still get to the quarterback and do what he needs to do. And Ashawn Robinson is showing a little more pass rush experience than we thought we were going to see out of him. So those 4 guys rotated fairly consistently, and they've all been pretty consistent. There's a reason the Lions defense is one of the better defenses in the NFL. Then he goes on to ask, how do you feel about your rookie class? I liked Davis, though I thought he would go in the second. I think the rookie class was a surprise. I'm kind of doing a little more research on it. I'm like, maybe not as big of a surprise as I thought. Like last year's was what you want to draft to be. This year's been solid. I mean, you have Jared Davis, who mans the middle of the defense, and in 2 games he had 15 tackles and 1 sack. And then when he was not playing the last couple weeks, you could see it on the defense. They need him there, and he's cleared from the concussion protocol and is likely to play. So that's always a plus. We haven't seen Thez Tabor yet. He could see his playing time this week, though. He's been inactive. I think the Lions kind of were looking at a red shirt because he was coming in with an injury already. Played throughout the preseason and then kind of kept him off of the field in the regular season. I think that time might be coming sooner, though, because of the play of DJ Hayden and specifically DJ Hayden. The line that's a 4th cornerback, and I think he could get promoted to that spot. So he could be seeing his time come soon, and we'll see it. We can get a fair judgment off of that. Kenny Galladay, like I mentioned earlier, had that big game in the beginning of the season. Since then, has not done much. For a 3rd-round pick, I'm not too surprised. Jalen Reeves-Maybin, another linebacker we drafted from Tennessee. He has 3 tackles so far this season, but he has been playing since Davis has gone down, and we had those injuries last week with the linebackers going down throughout the game. Paul Worley, though, went down, so he stepped in, and he didn't look too out of place, and that's encouraging for a 4th-rounder. Michael Roberts is starting to see playing time, like I mentioned earlier, with Ebron. Jamal Agnew is our punt returner, and he's returned already a punt for a touchdown, so that's helpful. And he's also right out there right now as I think our 5th corner. So I don't know how many snaps he's gotten at corner specifically, but he's looking okay, especially at punt returner. Jeremiah Ledbetter, I didn't think was going to make the team after they drafted him. I didn't think he was going to be good enough to crack into that rotation of defensive tackles. He has, and for the first 3 weeks, he was rated as one of the top D tackles in the whole country, in the whole league. And since then, he's kind of fallen off, and he's settling in the average category. But getting an average D tackle play out of a 6th-round rookie, I'm totally happy with. Brad Kaya is on the Panthers now. You should be familiar with him. Lions cut him, tried to get him on the practice squad. Panthers scooped him up. And then Pat O'Connor has been bouncing on and off the practice squad. So all in all, I think it's a pretty average class so far in the season. Jared Davis definitely is the star of the draft, and I think he is definitely going to be a star linebacker in the next couple of years. Jamal Agnew is definitely, I think, probably rookie number 2. And then Kenny Galladay, 3, Jeremiah Ledbetter, Reeves-Maybin, Roberts, and then Tabor, because the other 2 guys aren't on the team anymore. And then he asks about our corners. Finally, how have your corners been? I don't know much about them. How do they match up against speed versus size guys? Mostly man or zone? The Lions have definitely been the corners definitely been a strong suit for the Lions, and that's odd saying that last couple of years, especially when the last couple seasons ago, like we were amazed that Chris Houston was good, and he wasn't amazing, but we were so happy to have him because he was so much better than what we had. And then you had Rashawn Mathis, who played good, and then finally with Slay, it definitely started to add up. I said Slade might not be a top 5 corner, but he's easily in the top 10. Quandre Diggs has turned his career around after a terrible season last year, and Nevin Lawson has been solid and serviceable. The secondary has not allowed a single 100-yard receiver this season, and I was kind of surprised, especially when you look at the talent we've played. The closest to get to it was Julio Jones with 91 and Stephon Diggs got 98. But we played Stephon Diggs, Julio Jones, Odell Beckham Jr. Granted, he was coming off of an injury, and they'll hold on to that. But then you also had Larry Fitzgerald, who started to have a better season after that first game. We completely almost shut him down. Quandre Diggs did a great job against Fitz. But quarterbacks are completing 61% of passes against the secondary for 4 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Jared Davis has the 7th. So when I say in the article 7 interceptions, I forgot Jared Davis had 1. I knew they had 7. But thank you for your questions, PC Road Rage. I'll get more into some of the other stuff in a little bit. But we had one more question from the SB Nation site, Catch Scratch Reader. And it's from Dot, and it's no secret that offenses that play with a short passing game with lots of slants and quick routes tend to do well against our defense. Is there a particular scheme that tends to frustrate your defense? If that's what frustrates your defense, then the Lions could be in for a big game. That's what we like to do, especially with Tate. Tate, like I said, is the short passing guy. We do like a lot of slants and quick routes, so that could definitely be a big thing for the Lions. And hopefully if we start to expose that in the defense, they'll start to focus more on that, and that's when you can hit Marvin Jones for a deep pass. Hopefully, that's hopefully what I'm looking for. That makes me a little more less hesitant about this game. But that's what they've been doing since Jim Bob Cooter took over as the offensive coordinator. That's kind of been more of the offensive scheme, mixing in a deep pass every once in a while. It's not as much as Stafford's been adjusted to, where beginning of his career, he was just lobbing deep bombs all the time to Calvin or to any of the many mismatched wide receivers we had. Misfits, I should say, not mismatched, misfits. Now, Bob, our Cooter took a look at Stafford and was like, well, he does this and this better. Just focus more on that. And he's built this offense around Stafford. It's great. Now, to get to your question, it was also answered on SB Nation by a Lions fan. I'm going to get to it. D. Creed, and I think he just answered it the best, and there's no point in me repeating what he said because he said it perfectly. So I just went ahead, quoted him, and he said, if I had to point out a few weaknesses, they would be this. The Lions' D is young and fast. They are more susceptible than most defenses are to misdirection and trick plays, which is very true. If you can make the defense think you're going one way and go the other, you could probably bust off a bigger gain. And he says, the Lions secondary is really good when the refs aren't calling anything that's borderline. I have noticed that a lot too this season. There's been some times when you're like, that could be called pass interference, and I could understand it. So there's that. There's some hand fighting, but when the refs, Slauson and even Slay have lived right on the thin line of hand fighting interference through 4 games. Sometimes crossing it, sometimes it's just good defense. That's definitely something. If the refs want to call more hand fighting, then you could probably see that show up, and then the secondary be a little more hesitant about covering the way they have been. I don't want to call them the Seattle Seahawks defense from a couple years ago, where they were just straight up mugging the receivers on every play, knowing the refs wouldn't call pass interference on every play. But there's been a couple of plays where I'm like, ooh, that could have been a penalty. So that's something to look out for. If the refs want to call this one a little more, like if their Lions are playing right on that line, and if the refs start calling on that line, then you'll see the Lions defense probably giving up some bigger plays because the corners will want to back off and not get called for big pass interference plays. So that's probably the biggest weakness we have on the team. Moving over to pro sports, we have Jugs, the guy who's consistently asking questions every week. Thank you for that. This is the only question for pro sports, so after this we're going to be done, but he does ask 3. And first one, would Detroit have won against 60 minutes of Sam Bradford and Dalvin Cook? And I went ahead and responded. Dalvin Cook has been beating us up for the most part when he was in the game. Our chances for a win goes down the longer he's in the game. I admit Dalvin Cook was just killing us. And if he goes out, I don't think we win that game. If he doesn't go out, I don't think we win that game. And I said, who knows with Bradford? I said he had one good game against the Saints defense, the Saints team that had defensive struggles at that point. And I don't put much stock into Bradford of being much more than an average QB. He hasn't shown me anything really to prove that he's should extend out of that average QB rating or average QB setting. I believe he's right in there. I don't know if he's a guy I would be confident in winning a lot of games with, is what I would say. And it was a Saints team that has admitted they had defensive struggles, and in a sense then started putting up some good games against some decent offenses. He asks, how did the Lions stack up against Green Bay? I said, I think we stack up pretty well against Green Bay this season. I said, they currently have a 3-game win streak against the Lions, but all those games were within a touchdown. And I don't think they're the juggernaut they were a couple years ago, at least offensively. I don't want to get too excited and say we could sweep them. I definitely think we could split. We've been, we won in Green Bay a couple seasons ago, then they beat us in Detroit on the Rodgers deserves an Oscar for the way he was able to make it look like he was face masked play when he finished the game off with a Hail Mary. Still bitter. And then, but they currently do have a 3-game win streak on the Lions. They swept us last year. But like I said, it was all in one-score games. The Lions made almost that big comeback last year in Lambeau, and then lost just barely in Detroit, but loss is a loss. I definitely think the division is not as far as it has been in the last couple of years. I still think the Packers might be just a little above the Lions, just based on history, especially with the last 5 years, definitely. I think that gap is closing though, and I don't know if one day the Lions will overtake them or if Green Bay will be able to restock and go up, but I think the Lions are getting closer. And his last question is Amir Abdullah for real, and should we expect him to be consistent? And I pretty much just sent back, what is your definition of real? Is he a 300 carry, 1,000-yard a season rusher? I don't think so. I don't think that's him. But I said, is he a guy that can contribute and be one of the many playmakers on this team? Definitely. You've seen that in the first couple games. He hasn't cracked 100 yards rushing in his career yet, but last week he got close, gotten up in the 90s. I said, I think he can be like a 700, 800-yard rushing yards a season, add in maybe 300, 400 receiving yards. I'd be very happy with that, but I think that's kind of his ceiling right now. I don't see him as the workhorse back that you're going to just give the ball to constantly, especially with Theo Riddick also on the team. So those are all the questions we've gotten this week. Thank you for those. And going more into this, I mean, the biggest news coming with the Panthers this week was Cam Newton's comments about women reporters. Since then issued an apology, so I kind of beat him up on. I didn't really beat him up on Twitter as much as I was just retweeting people that were beating him up on Twitter. So I don't know how to feel about that. Well, I definitely don't. I don't like the comment. Definitely, we're 21st century. This is not something that should be like even debatable at this point. Where if women should be allowed to cover sports. I know a lot of women that cover sports, and they're really great at their jobs. I mean, Paula Pash does a great job on the Lions, and Tori Petty does as well. They're both great beat writers. They both cover the Lions great, and they know their stuff. There's a lot of guys out there who try to talk about sports, and they don't know anything about sports. So, and I work with women who work in sports, and they love it. They love sports. They love sports sometimes more than I do, which is huge. I love sports incredibly. This is why I'm in this business, and why I'm in the business of multimedia journalism. But these girls are insane, and they're gonna be great at their jobs. So it's kind of disappointing to hear those comments, but yeah, I did hear a great argument is, what if Rob Gronkowski had said that? And the host wasn't trying to make it a race thing because Rob's white, Cam's black, but it was because we know Gronkowski's he's the big, lovable, dumb idiot. And so they've said, well, he's just thinking about, everyone would be like, oh, haha, Rob's thinking about boobs. Because, well, we know that's what he thinks about in the huddles and all that. Thought that was an interesting conversation because, yeah, had it been someone that we know kind of makes jokes, everyone would have been like, oh, whatever. Definitely, though, I don't think there's a place for that in sports in this generation. Definitely, that needs to stop. And I'm not the one. I'm just gonna leave it at that because I don't want to get this too much into a equality topic. So. Other than that, I think the Lions' best chance is going to be limit Cam Newton, limit him on the ground. He's been doing a lot more of that this season, and that's definitely a weakness for the Lions. They have in the past proven not to be real good against running quarterbacks. Best example, go back to 2011 when we played Michael Vick when he came back for the first time. Michael Vick single-handedly carried that Eagles team past us. Totally different defense, but I still think running the quarterbacks will give the Lions more fits than the Lions will be able to stop. So definitely look out for that. Christian McCaffrey, I think he's probably the biggest threat to the Lions this week because like when they what D. Creed mentioned, he is the best. I mean, not he is the best, but that's how you beat the Lions is misdirection plays. And I think he could definitely use a lot of misdirection. He's definitely agile. Tahir Whitehead said he reminds me of a Jace Billingsley. He's shifty. So then Lions fans were like, well, why isn't Jace on the team right now? Why is he on the practice squad? If Christian McCaffrey reminds you of Jace Billingsley. So shiftiness, it definitely could hurt the Lions there. And they have some good receivers, Kelvin Benjamin. Some people think he's overrated. I think he's kind of I think he's better. He's definitely better than average. I don't think he's a top tier receiver. Devin Funchess has had a pretty good season this year. So definitely the Panthers offense, if we want to stop them, we need to disrupt the pass game. We need to break up that offensive line. And from what the Panthers fan, PC Road Rage mentioned, was it PC Road? I want to get this 100% correct. It was not PC. Oh yeah, it was PC Road Rage. Mentions the offensive line weaknesses on the sides, on the ends. So definitely we need to disrupt that. We need to blow up the offensive line if we want any chance of winning this. And as far as defensively goes, that's what I said defensively. As far as offensively for us goes, we need to play that short game. We need to play the safe ball that we have been playing and just trust that the defense can make more stops. I kind of liked watching these Lions games. They don't have to ball out to win all the time now. It's not like Stafford has to single-handedly put everyone on his back, get down the field, and win the game. As long as the defense can keep the Panthers offense, limit them more times than the Panthers defense limits us, we're golden. I mean, I know that this works in every game, but especially in this one, especially with Stafford playing the way he has, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception. He did have a couple of close calls last week, but didn't get the interceptions, so there's that. Pretty much what I'm feeling on this game. My prediction, I don't know what I'm going to predict. I'm going to predict it's going to be more of a low-scoring game, and I know I just talked about how both teams have decent offenses and offensive schemes. But I'm going to have to go with it's going to be a defensive battle, I believe. So I'm thinking more along the lines of a 21-17 Lions win. Yeah, I'm going Lions win. So far in the season, I am 3-1. I predicted win against the Cardinals, win against the Giants, a loss against the Falcons, and then a win against. I much rather would have had that win. And I did going through Panthers SB Nation site before we end the video. I did read some of their comments about the going up against the Lions, and a lot of the fans were. Let's face it, the Lions are a 4-0 team that got screwed by the refs, and I'm like, we're not the only ones that think that now. But I don't think we were screwed by the refs. It's an old rule. It's a rule, but it doesn't really have its place in today's NFL. I could go on a whole tirade about that rule. But that's a couple weeks ago. I'm not going to let it dwell on that much more than I already have. So if you like the video, go ahead, leave a like, leave some comments down below, subscribe to the channel. I will try to do these videos more often. I know I've been slacking school. And anyways, and I will see you guys all. Hopefully I'll be able to do I don't know if I'll be able to do a post-game video. I'll be driving home Sunday. I won't even probably be able to watch the game. But I will see you guys all in the next video I do. See ya.